Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have Meryl Selesky here. Say hi, Meryl.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Yeah, we are looking at the very beginning of stages of fall. I know, actually, right now it's October 15th. Tomorrow, the 16th, I think we have our first major cold front pushing through, but the last couple weeks have been real good fishing. I don't know if you've been getting out there and getting at them, but how's it
Yeah,
been?
yeah. I have several stories. I actually went with a couple guides, and I've done my own journeys a couple times too. So yeah, I'd like to share what I've experienced and what I've learned on these trips that I went on. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so before we get started, definitely want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Knock and Tail Lures. If you're looking for a soft plastic that has a rattle, that has a rattle, internal rattle that kind of gives an extra incentive for the fish to bite, look up Knock and Tail Lures. You can find them at My Coast Outdoors or knockantaillures.com. And my personal favorite, the chartreuse and white, as well as the plum chartreuse. Meryl, what's your favorite color that you've been using?
Lately, it's been the white with truce tail, and
Yep.
yeah, I've been throwing that one a lot lately. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, just if you're looking for those, they're get stock up for flounder season. They've been real good. Um, I'm just excited to have them for the flounder season as always. But and also definitely give a shout out to 4A Printing. They have make our custom merch such as our buffs and towels. They do awesome work. So if you're looking for stuff like that, reach out to Aaron. He'll get you hooked up. And also Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a Facebook group to talk kayaking and fishing up and down the Texas coast, search DSKA or Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. And of course, Meryl's lovely wife, Brittany Selesky. If you're looking for residential or commercial real estate here in Houston, reach out to her. She'll get you set up with the property of your dreams. Look her up at 281-740-0498 or Brittany at Brittany Selesky at gmail.com. So, like you said, I actually, for me, I'm going to start off because I went recently a couple days ago on Sunday, and it was just amazing. Actually probably one of the better trips I had this year, and I've had some good trips this year too. But one of the best trips I had, we got out there, and to be honest, we were targeting flounder. I was hoping the flounder were had showed up. They didn't, but it's a little early for where I was, and they just weren't there yet. But no worries because the areas I like to target, there's usually multiple species that I can target in those areas, and that's why I like them. Um, you know, it's very on certain rare occasions I can hit the trifecta. Like I'll have shots at all the trout I want, all the flounder I want, and all the reds I want. Today it was just a trout fest. Like there's just so much trout out there. We got out, that tide was ripping out, and we were just focusing on these rock structures where we're hoping to flounder were, but man, we got out there and you could see just rafts of mullet just swimming along the rocks, um, and we from those rocks about probably about 50 yards out there was it's just all shell, just shell, about 3-4 foot of water. And we started on top of a reef that probably went it's probably about ankle deep, and it just drops gradually into slopes out into that 3-4 foot water. And we got out there probably around 5:30, 5:45 ish, so the sun wasn't even up yet. And I was like, man, there's just so much bait here. Let's start chucking top waters and see what happens. The bait wasn't nervous or anything, they were just around, but I'm like, there's got to be fish around here. And my buddy, he hasn't been kayak fishing in a while. He said the last time he went kayak fishing with me last winter. So it's been a while for him in a kayak. And we just started drifting down this flat and just chunking topwaters. And there's something about chunking topwaters at night where it's just, it's calm. You just hear everything. You hear the flip of a mullet. You hear a bird fly overhead. And more importantly, you hear that topwater just go clack, 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 clack. Um, and it's just you and that top water because that's all you can really hear, and also all you're paying attention to. Like you can't really see. We could probably see a little bit, but you can't really see that top water. And then clack, 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 boom.
Yeah, it gets really dark back there in Jones Bay. You know,
Oh,
back
no,
in
no,
that
no, no.
area.
Shh.
No, I just I'm messing with you.
Yeah, but man, it just you get that it's all still and calm, and you just hear that clack, and all of a sudden that trout busts up, or that fish just busts your top water, and your heart jumps up, your blood pressure goes up, and you're just like everything just elevates, and sometimes, like I said, you can't see your top water, and you're just trying to feel like, is it on? Is it not? Do I need to keep? Do I need to pause it? Do I need to keep going? And it's just that moment of of decision that you have to do. Um, and my first, I had a couple blowups that didn't stick. My buddy, he got a couple on the stringer doing that, and I finally got my one, and it was like, man, it's just heavy weight, pulling, ripping drag. And I'm like, yeah, this is a good one. It ended up being a 23, 24 inch trout. Um, and I'm like,
That's a
man,
that's a good trout. That's a really
oh
good
yeah,
one.
yeah. And it was just so awesome. And then the sun slide, we got a couple more blowups, and man, that sun came up, and like I said, you just saw all this mullet just swimming around. Then they started getting nervous. And so I was like, screw this. I'm just going to take off, because like I said, I wanted to go after flounder. I'm just going to get my trout right now, put on a soft plastic, and just start casting that mullet, hooking up every other cast, and we started getting closer to structure, and every so often all these mullet would just like run up against the rocks because they're being chased. And it was a good time, man. And we ended up, catching our limit, a little bit longer than I would have liked, just because I was trying to, again, try indecision of what I wanted to do. And then I was like, you know what? There's a spot further down. Let's go over there. There's usually redfish on there, and we can throw wake baits up against those rocks, and for redfish. And we made that kind of the cardinal sin of leaving fish to find fish. But I'm like, man, we got our fill of trout. Let's just go over there and figure it out for redfish. Went over there. Yeah, the redfish weren't there. um, but but I got a couple rat reds that on the wake bait. It was fun. There were some trout over there as well. I'm like, you know what? The wind's picking up. Let's go back. Came back. Trout were still there. So yeah, it was a good time. And like I said, fall is right here, and we're gonna have that for a bit.
Yeah, Kyle, hit me up, bud, for your next tournament that you run. I want to send your tournament a little package from One Last Cast. So just let me know when's your next one. Send you a little care package for a gift or giveaway. Um, so yeah. Oh, so okay. So I had a couple journeys. One was with Scott Knoll, and then I had another one
Ooh.
out in Port O'Connor, and then I had another one. Well, I had quite a few, but I think my journey with I'll start off with the Port O'Connor one because I feel like there was a lot of things to learn from Port O'Connor. Um, no, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's start off with the Captain Knoll trip, okay? Because then it can lead to the second trip from Port O'Connor and why I did what I did. So I went out with Scott Knoll. Not the best conditions. Winds were pumping, a little bit higher than usual. We just had one front that came in that blew in, so it kind of murked up the water pretty bad. So we made our way out and we started looking for. We're gonna start off the morning with. I remember seeing him at the gas station, and he had these poppers on, and I was like, man, if we're going tarpon fishing with poppers, I've never done that before. So I was telling my buddy Thad that, man, and Juan, Juan's probably on here, but I was telling him, man, I've never fished with tarpon for a popper. I'm just interested on how that goes. But what his plan was to go fish for jacks first, get the line tight, and then we'll go shoot out for jacks when the wind comes down. So we didn't see any jacks, so we ended up just going straight for the tarpon. My buddy Juan hooked up, caught him a nice one, took a picture of it. We seen a couple of them out there. We just they weren't schooling like the way we wanted them to, and they weren't moving the way we wanted them to. So we were just steady chunking baits the whole time, and we grinded it. Scott's definitely a grinder. We grinded all the way to the end of the day, and then we saw a couple schools of jacks. We got on some schools of jacks. One of them, so I misread this, right? So catching jacks when I've caught them on a kayak, man, that fight's just like hard, long battles, and they're pushing down. And one of the fights I remember was right there, right outside the mouth of the jetties, and I just remember it being a long, drawn out fight. Like, man, am I ever gonna pick this sucker up? And I had another one by the rig that was pretty big, that was just fights longer than I thought. But when you're on a boat and you have bigger gear, the fight is not as bad as you think. So we're out. We got into the school. We saw the school. We threw our poppers out, started popping a boom, and then also throwing some other like DOA baits, like the terrorize, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
the bait busters are the terrorize. I'm not too sure which one's which. The bigger one. So we threw those out at them, and we all hooked up. So there was like all three of us are hooked up, right? Scott put us right in perfect position for all three of us to hook up. We're all hooked up, and then I see Juan and Thad all hooked up, and I was like, man, we're all gonna get tangled. Man, screw that. I put my hand on the reel so I could just bust the line, and then and I just didn't want a long fight. I was like, man, I'm not. End of the day, I'm not trying to fight a jack for like 10, 15 minutes, like So I popped the line, whatever, and then Thad, they got tangled like I thought they would, and then they got untangled and they brought it in right away, and I was like, well, shit, that was only like a 3, 4 minute fight, like. Man, that wasn't a bad fight at all. Now I'm feeling like a dummy because when he initially ran, I should have let him run just a little longer, and I probably could have controlled him and brought him in around on the backside of the boat. So that was one of the lessons that I've learned. That's one of the lessons that I learned. So when we got on the other school, I got him on the popper. I threw the popper out there. I started popping it. Boom, he explodes. He hits it again. And then I fought him. And then I realized the fights were not that long on the popper. I think I probably fought him for like 3 to 4 minutes at the most and brought him in. It was a huge old jack. I took a picture of it and posted it. So that being said, what I learned with Scott, I figured, you know what, I'm going to come back on a better day, better conditions, and then see if I have a shot at these tarpon. So we make it back, and I make it back to Port O'Connor, and then we try my luck out there. Some of you people might know Port O'Connor, but I didn't have a lot of luck. We didn't even see one roll, so it was like my luck. So I was like, screw it, I'll go into the bay. So I went into the bay, started fishing over there by Cedars, and then if people, this is a long journey. This is probably like a 13, 14 mile journey. So I was back by Cedars, and I cut, along a Cascavallo Pass. I might be saying that wrong. Well, anyways, I make it through the pass, and then I cut it through this marsh, and then the wind was like maybe 15 to 18 miles an hour. And I remembered when the wind picks up, and I learned this back in, I wonder if I should say this. This is some people's tournament spots. So we'll just call it Seawolf Park, right? Uh, so I remember one time in Seawolf Park, I actually head into the back canals where they're real skinny and shallow. These canals, these redfish will run in there for the pressure is not as big as an influence in these shorter, smaller canals. So I fished the inside canals, and I just started catching redfish after redfish after redfish. And sure enough, man, they were all bigger slots, upper slots. So that and my past experience led me to make that decision to fish these smaller channels and canal as I'm making my way all the way back up the several different paths like Miriam's Pass, Fisher's Cut, and all that. As I'm making all those, fishing these back channels and canals before I make my way up to the pass and to meet up with Michael and Daniel. Michael and Daniel, they were having fun catching trout all day, looking for looking for looking for redfish, but catching trout, right?
It
So
happens. It happens.
yes, so so the next day we go out, right, and it's like early in the morning. Um, we all try to learn, pick up knowledge, what's going on, what's the pattern. We figure out the pattern probably about 10 o'clock. I figured out the pattern. So I started exploring in these back canals and these back lakes, find a couple small schools, cast on them, bust a couple pumpkins. All those redfish, they had these like really, really dark red backs. I mean, they really look like pumpkins. And so we got them dialed in, and we go to the expo. When we make it to the expo, we run into Terrell McGuire. I think that's what his name. He's like, "Oh man, we were out there and we're catching them on top waters, but on the other side." So then it was like because I'm not afraid to ask people like, what did they do different than what I did, and what were they doing that made them successful? So I asked them, well, what was going on. We both asked them, and they said top waters. The next day, Michael and Daniel went out there. I had to book it back. Um, daughter's birthday. But they go over there in top waters and they light up the redfish with top waters. So that was one of those things where you ask what other I'm I know I'm not, and a lot of other people, they're not afraid to ask what other people did or did different, right, and learn from that. But the wind was a little bit higher than usual, right? We're talking about 15 miles an hour average. So kind of learning what the redfish do in bigger winds would help in these future endeavors or journeys that you make out in the marsh. And then you notice that if you're not catching them out right in the lakes, and you're trying to figure out, hey, what do I do next if I can't catch them? I'm seeing them, I'm looking at them, they're moving, I'm throwing hit them in the head with the lure, they're just not biting, right? you know try these back little channel canals and whatever, try your luck in there, or try top water. We also heard another guy tell us they limited out in an hour, and it was like four of them. They chummed the water with sardines. Yeah, they just on the flat at Port O'Connor, cut up baits, threw them out on the flat, brought all the redfish that were there in, and then they threw live shrimp and popping cork, and then they caught the redfish that way. I think they used popping cork and shrimp and maybe some lures, whatever. Um,
That's
but
interesting.
yeah, that's what I thought. Right, that was very interesting. I would have never thought to cut up sardines. Or no, 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 no. Was it sardines? What was it, Michael?
Maybe like Menhaden.
No, he said sardines. Was it
Okay.
sardines? Yeah, he said sardines. He cut up sardines, threw them out there, chummed the water. And then I would think, right, if you cut up sardines, you throw it on the flat, why wouldn't you just hook a sardine and throw it out there? I don't know. That's what I would have done. But now they use live shrimp and popping cork after they chummed it up with sardines. So I thought that was interesting, because that's a strategy or technique that I would have never thought to do or even try. Right? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the offshore guys do it all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some guys they'll chum up the waters. A whole bunch of shad, cut up these big old cut up these shads, throw them out there for these kingfish by these rigs to get a nice slick going, right? And
yeah,
then they just drift that shad in that slick, and boom, and that's how they catch kingfish on these tougher days. Um, but yeah, so it was a learning experience from Port O'Connor, and then I had another fishing journey where we went out. Well, I'll just say it, right, because I'm probably gonna post a video of it here soon. I went and checked out those reefs by the Causeway. So I mean, there's a lot of times at the Causeway where I felt like I learned a lot from it when the lights used to be on at night, and I wish that the lights would come back on, because we had a lot of fun there at the Causeway. And I think it was what's his name, Scott. Scott mentioned it, that we should probably have an episode of a whole bunch of stories of the Causeway, because I'm pretty sure I got at least a couple hours of stories of the Causeway.
oh yeah,
But what made me hit up these reefs was I was working the Causeway, and then I drifted to the other side where the train bridge was at, and I worked the train bridge. And then behind me, I noticed that there was like bait blowing up, right, or birds working, right. I've been in those situations where bait's blowing up or birds are working, and big old schools of mullet are getting blasted. And I'm like, well, shoot, let me go over there, check it out, right? And then before I knew it, I'm throwing over like these little small patches of reefs. So I went and checked those out and caught probably caught about 50, 60 trout, just going from patch to patch. And anywhere where there was like schools of mullet getting blown up, like right where it got blew up, I just threw right on the other side of that, reeled through it, and it was almost like trout were there. Um, that I was throwing a sand eel. I threw a sand eel on that one. Mike was not Mike. Daniel was able to give me a sand eel. That's one of those baits I like to dance over the reef with because it bounces off the belly and where the eye's placed at, it's a little bit on the higher side. So I can bounce that lure's belly over the reef. So when I'm trying to get down lower, because sometimes the bigger trout are on the bottom, the smaller trout are on top. So if you're really a little faster on the top, you catch the smaller one. Sometimes it doesn't matter, right? You'll catch a big trout reeling in the steady, high and fast. But then after I did that, I went to go to Virginia's Point, kind of swung to Virginia's Point, and I tied on the white with truce knocking tail. And for some reason, I wasn't successful. What made me switch, right, was I was using the sand eel, and it was like they're biting on the back end of the tail. So I was like, I couldn't get them to hold it and grip it the way I wanted to. So I threw it out there, and I changed it to something that rattled to grab their attention a lot more. So when I threw that out there, punching those rocks and working those rocks, it was the twitching of the rattle, and when the rattle came down, it was like they swallowed that sucker. So I'm like trying to get the lure when the lure's like in their gill plate, and then they got these gnarly teeth, trying to get them out of that. But that's where that application where I had to switch up and get something that where it'll grab the flounder's attention a little bit more than the sand eel would. So if you definitely want to make some noise out there, you want to put on a rattle tail or we use the knocking tail lures. So
Yep.
um,
Yeah,
I do I do switch them up though. Like the water was a little bit clearer on that side because where Virginia Point is and the rocks are at, there's a lot of reef the way the wind was blowing on the other side. So the water was a little bit clear. But if it was coming from the other direction and the water was murked up and dirty, I'd probably do the Texas Roach one. That's the one I would throw in dirty water. I like to use the Texas Roach. A little bit clearer water where they can see a little bit. I'll probably use the white and truce. But that's what I would have done.
yeah,
Oh,
and I was just saying that the one of those things of whenever you're fishing to clear water. Yeah, I've been at Virginia Point, and sometimes it can be, especially during winter, it'll be amazingly clear, like over in that area. Like literally, we were over there probably a couple winters ago, and my buddy and I were just drifting around. Um, and you're literally like 5 6 foot, you can see the bottom kind of thing. And we saw, pairs of trout that were 4 5 6 pounds just cruising. And
mm,
of course, by the time you see them, we're kind of on top of them already. It's not that clear, but uh, whenever you have like water like that, number one, it kind of depends on what the bait's doing. Whenever the bait, like you said, they're blowing up, they're just blowing up, blowing up. I feel like you can throw like hot pink and it'll be completely fine.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
but in situations like that, when the fish is finicky, you're searching. Um, you got to throw kind of those like that white or the quote unquote more natural colors. Not something too flashy. Uh,
right. Yeah, that was
I
a
mean,
ticket for me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, I think those reefs have a lot to play with that water, right? If it blows to a certain direction, Virginia Point's just trash. Like it trashes that area. The water gets pretty murked up and dirty. But if it blows in a direction where the reefs it has to hit the reef first, then you know. And then I think the wind that day was maybe 10 to 12. I mean, it was still pumping, right? I mean, you know, but that area didn't have. I've been there where that area has a lot of flounder. there wasn't a lot of flounder. You had to work for the ones that were there. Well, I had to work for the ones that were there. I've been there where like certain areas where you cash, that's a flounder. That's a flounder. And I think this we got a cold front coming in tonight. Is that correct?
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay.
Yeah.
So we got a cold front coming in tomorrow. I'll see what the winds look like, but when we what we need, I feel like is one of those good long fronts to push all the water out of these marshes because we're still catching them in the marsh, right? I had another
Yeah.
trip where we're in the marsh, we're catching big flatties at these drains. Big flatties at these drains and up against just punching the grass lines like you would for redfish and still catching flounders. Big old flatties back there. So once we get that big wind to push them all out of those marshes, we should start seeing them migrating outside and into the areas where we have a lot of fun with them this time of year.
Yeah. Actually, you know where I've been seeing, and of course this is just anecdotally, it's just what I've seen online. You know where I've been seeing a lot of people have been catching flounder, like especially been catching flounder this year, like a lot of them.
Where?
San Luis Pass, like all around there. I've been seeing people like they're just wading the flats out there, and they've been catching them. They've been over at like Mudcut, they've been catching them. Over in Cold Pass, they've been catching them. Um, and it's very
I,
interesting.
I feel like those flounder stay there year round. And the
Really,
reason I
yeah.
say yeah, the reason I say that is because I could stab big flatties on that flat in between Cold Pass and then that other gut that runs through that marsh. You could stab them on that flat year round. You could stab them on the gut of cold along the grass line. You're able to walk that grass line before it drops off. Like
Hmm.
you could stab them on that shoreline all along Cold Pass year round. And then there's a little dip that goes along the grass line on Cold Pass. There's a little small dip valley that they love hanging out with before you get up on that flat again that's facing the road. You used to be able to park on the road and then walk out on that flat. I don't know if you can anymore. It's really muddy, so I mean, if you're not an experienced wader, I wouldn't recommend doing it. But it gets a little muddy and soft in some spots. You got to work your way through it. But once you get on that sandbar before Cold Pass drops off, you can catch flounder there year round.
Yeah, but it's just like I've been seeing people posting up like, "Oh, I caught this flounder," and it looks like they're waiting over by the pass, or like I said, they were out there, um, and I don't know. It was just interesting because I have, typically, and there's still people catching a bunch of trout out there too. But like I said, it seems like more than normal than what I've normally seen. People have been catching a lot of flounders over there, which is cool. So, um, but like I said, I'm not sure about the if they're like stay there all year round. It makes sense because like it's deep water. They don't really need to go anywhere too far for food and everything like that. Um, but be very interesting to see when this first cold front how things kind of shape up this flounder season. So,
Do you have your spot that you're gonna go hit up when that front pushes through?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm ready for it.
Just go
Like I
ahead.
said,
Just,
I
just share it. Just share it with the group.
uh, well, I mean, you kind of blew it up already with Seawolf Park, you know.
Oh, okay, all right. You're gonna be one of those guys out there, elbow to elbow. You know,
Elbowed.
yeah. You know what's funny is like some of the guys during this time, you'll see some guys fishing out towards the drop off, and then some guys fishing out towards the bank. Right? They're standing out like maybe so many feet, and they're working the bank. And I've seen it time and time again. The guys punching the bank are catching better quality flounder than the guys punching the drop off. But yeah, that's something to look forward to. If you
I
make your
think
way, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I told that last year. I was a kid. We were waiting, and it was just like the line of people was like going further and further away, and we got there a little late, and so we're just working. We were working our way out, and I'm like, man, I don't want to work my way to that line of people out there. Um, Also, like as a kid with waiters, I can only go so far. Um, so we stayed near the bank, and I was like, well, flounder they like structure, right? Well, the rocks right here. And so we started casting towards the rocks, and we started catching flounder. It's like real good flounder, just catching through there. And I remember. this is like one of the first like times I distinctly remember as a kid like getting kind of pissed off with somebody. There's this guy. He was walking back. I don't. He was just walking back to his car, and he was kind of meandering along the rocks in the water. And I literally, and I was my line was out there, and he literally kind of just like picked up my line and went under it. And I'm like, what the heck?
Like, excuse me, sir.
Yeah. And I, as a kid, I was like, you know, what just happened? I'm catching fish right there, and he just kind of walked over everywhere, and it kind of killed it for a little bit, but they came back, so it was all good. But yeah, it was very interesting because I can remember that because I remember being like kind of anger, kind of bubbling, like who does that,
Have you ever fished Titlim Talim?
I have, yeah.
You have. You have any experience with flounders that stick around in that area?
Yeah, so for me, I usually fish over there because I'm targeting trout,
Mm.
um, and a lot of the flounder, especially to be honest, a lot of the bigger flounder I've caught usually is as a byproduct of like a backlash. you know,
Oh wow.
I cast out there. I usually staked out. The tide's kind of ripping out a little bit, and what I've been doing usually is like I cast up current and it drifts back, and I just kind of keep pressure on it and just kind of feel it and kind of lightly twitch it up, and it just the trout they'll thump it, or it'll kind of feel weird because it'll just stop, um, but I'll backlash it, and I'm not keeping in contact with it. I'm picking it out, doing it. I pick it up and it's like, I got there's not much rocks out there, but there are rocks, some structure on the bottom, because it's most like sand, mud, or whatever it is. It's stuck on something like a little piece of oyster or something. You pick it up and then you set the hook kind of, and then it just kind of starts moving a little bit, and then like, oh, it's a fish, and it's probably a flounder because I'm sitting there, and it turns out you get a nice, 18, 19-inch flounder just because you freaking backlashed.
Yeah, it is sand mud there. That's interesting that you said that. You think that because it's sand mud that sometimes is the pass maybe changes certain guts and patterns. Because I've never heard of it. That term is sand mud because that's exactly how Cold Pass, Titlim Taplum, that whole area is sand mud. I
Yeah,
wonder why.
it's I don't know. And when I say sand mud, it's just the reason why I say that is because there are some areas over there that's just hard sand, um, and like you could definitely wade it and be fine, and then you walk like 100 yards, and for some reason it's just like it's real super soft, um, and and then it becomes sand again. So like that's why I just say sand mud because I'm not exactly sure what's on the bottom. Um, and like there's I usually when I say, and I also when I'll mention that I typically don't wade around there. Um, the current can be pretty gnarly, um, and I usually just stay in the kayak, so I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, stay safe just in case there's sharks that like to roam that area a lot.
And I'm not worried about the sharks. So,
Oh no,
yeah, it's
it's the
mainly
current.
it's mainly just the current and like I don't want to like I haven't mapped it out. I've only fished there probably maybe a couple dozen times in my entire life. It's not that many times, so I don't know where exactly everything is. Um, and it's a matter of you know, and especially just those mouth openings.
Right.
That's really all you're targeting. So you just kind of find those, stake out, and kind of work that. Go with the current. Okay, if they're there, they're there. If they're not, go to another mouth opening, and you'll find them. So.
Yeah, if you're lucky and the tide's right, it's a little bit higher than normal.
Mm.
Those channels will take you back to these areas that you most likely you can't get to because there's reef. If the tide's kind of normal, that reef is barely below that water level, and there's no way you can get a kayak over that. But if the water level's maybe like a foot higher than normal, you can get back in these back lakes and these little skinny canals in Titlim, and most of the times there's schools of redfish just back there, and you can just see them blowing up shad, shrimp, whatever, and it's usually a good time.
Yeah,
Um,
actually, the past couple weeks, our bays have been a little bit higher than normal because we've had all these hurricanes going up to Florida. So it kind of been pushing the water up, and a lot of those grass lines were underwater. Man, they were just it was just redfish, just like, you know, I saw a redfish, like I said, like a month ago, just like sitting, like just crushing bait on top of a flooded grass flat. Like it was just like going through and just like, shrimp were running away, mullet was trying to escape out of there. I caught a couple flounder too because like I'll be, I couldn't tell if it was a redfish or not, but I would pitch over to the edge of the grass line, right where it's flooded, and it was a mullet or whatever. I didn't really know what I was pitching at, and it would hit the bottom, and I'd pick it up and boom, and it'd be a
Nice.
flounder to just pull it up.
All right. That was so close to that area is Christmas Bay,
Hmm.
and I was making my way from Christmas Bay going towards Titlim, right? So heading in that direction. That was the first time I've seen a big old cloud of flounder. I've never seen that before. I've seen that once in my life where there's just, you ever see where the stingrays, or where they, when they come down the beach, and then it's just
Yeah,
like the whole area is just covered in just brownness, and you just see all these like stingrays swimming in that. That was, I saw that in like 3 feet of water of flounder. So just a whole bunch of school of flounder just moving down the shoreline.
interesting.
Yeah, that was it was me. Who was I with? This is when I was back in the Manta Ray, so it's been years. But yeah, that was the first time I've seen that, and at first it just looked like, because the water back there has so much reefs, so the water's a little bit clearer than normal. So when you see a big old dark cloud that looks like a mud boil just moving along the shoreline, and it was also murking up the water as it was going. But when you just see that big old thing and just all these flounders just going, jumping up out of the water, I mean, just doing acrobatic stuff, and then you could just see them on the top and all the way down. So when I casted in it, I hooked onto the smallest one out of the whole school. Like I swear it was like a little baby one. I was like, man, out of all that, because once I hooked onto that, they all just kind of went back, and then they kind of made their way together. But I'm still dealing with this little small, like I think it was probably like a 13 or 12-inch flounder out of that big old school of flounder. But sometimes you get lucky, you know.
Oh yeah,
um, but I don't know. I just remember that there. We used to fish for big trout back there in Christmas Bay too. Wade fishing. That's actually me and my buddy TJ used to go back there during the winter times and fish for big trout, because there's a lot of mud and reef structure there, and we do pretty good there. But
yeah. Unfortunately, it's a lot of the areas that, and I was actually telling my buddy on Sunday we were talking about, last time that we fished together in the kayak, and was I planning on doing any tournaments this winter, and I'm planning on doing some, but I think I need a pretty good reset because a lot of the areas that I like to fish for trout, they've just been kind of developed over. A lot of changes happen. Some of the mud shell reefs that I frequented in the past, they're no longer there. They got silted over. Um, one of them got dug out for a channel. So, um, and in certain other areas, they've you know I won't name where it is, but certain other areas have opened up. It's becoming a little more public, and people know about them. So the the oasis that I had, where I could just fish by myself and not have a bunch of people there. It's kind of opened up, and there are boaters back there now and other kayakers. So it's a little more difficult to do what I want to do. Um, but yeah, it's kind
but
of
a sea wolf is no secret, Jonathan. Sea wolf, everybody fishes there for big trout. So I'm just teasing. Go ahead,
I
man.
actually that does remind me. So this one time, um, I was near beginning to like figure out lures, um, and I went to Seawolf with a 52 MR, the mirror lure 52 MR.
I like that
Um,
lure. I really
it,
do.
it's it,
Which
and I
was it?
was
The
there.
great, was that the gray one you had? Is it
No,
like the
no, no.
mullet?
It was an 808 color, which is the orange and gold.
Oh, that's the orange and gold, the TTR 28.
It looks like a TTR, but it doesn't have the rattle. It's just it's a the 58.
Okay.
But anyways, it basically it's a suspending twitch bait. It sinks real fast. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna, as a broke college kid, I don't really have $8 to spend on a lure, but I'm gonna spend $8 on a lure. So I got that and I went out to Seawolf Park. I parked on the outside of the park because I don't want to pay to get in. And it was like the middle of the day. There was nobody out there in the middle of summer, and it started working this lure, and I started catching trout. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. Lure fishing's easy.
Yeah.
um, and I
Yeah,
started
got
catching
lucky,
trout,
buddy.
and just started doing all these things. And I back then the limit was like 10. I caught like 4 or 5 of them, and I'm like, man, this is great. Um, and finally, I was just working slowly, going towards the destroyer, the ship that's on the shoreline. Just
Right.
walking there, so it's like not exactly sand, but it's like a little bit of rocks, some structure underneath, and every so often you kind of get hung up. So I'd kind of walk over there and pull it out. But I was just working it and just feel this thump, hit the water, thump, set the hook, and this fish, what I assume was a trout, just like massive head comes out with the lure in its mouth, thrashing, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, man, that's a giant trout. I pull tight on it, pop.
Oh.
And lesson learned there: if you're fishing around structure, um, make sure to check your leader because either that or that whatever that fish that more than likely a trout. It had sharp teeth anyways, but definitely my leader line was getting worn down from like being around structure and all that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, and I just pop like, oh man, and of course that's like the only one that I had.
That
So
that hurts, like, right, that
oh
hurts,
yeah,
especially if you see the big, like me, it hurts, like, to this day, it still hurts. This has happened years and years ago, like, a big fish just coming up, and you get to see his body or his head shake, and then either A, you lose your lure or the lure comes out. And you're sitting there like, what did I do wrong?
yeah,
you know? But sometimes, right? I'm in awe, right? Has that ever happened to you? Like you're working a top water and it blows it up and you're like, oh man, you forget you're like fishing, like, oh man, let me get back on the reel.
yeah.
Like I do that too many times. I'm like, oh man, that was so sweet. That was so cool to look at. But
But
forget that you're
the
fishing there for a quick second and just admiring what was
oh
happening.
yeah, but the best part though was like, so like I was like, oh, that sucks. Um, I don't have another 58, but let me just put on a soft plastic. They'll probably hit that. I didn't
No.
get another bite for like another hour and a half that I was out there. Um, and I'm like, I don't understand, like, why aren't they? And it's because like whatever presentation that you're doing, certain lures they have their time. They're more prone to being struck. Um, and I remember after that, I went to Academy and like bought like 6 of them with money I didn't have.
Right.
Uh, and I tried that lure everywhere.
Mhm.
And I distinctly remember not catching another fish for a while on the 58 or the 52. I'm sorry, the 52. Um, and it was a while. Um, but I think that's also part of it because, like, again, I remember this so vividly, like just trying new lures and figuring things out. Um, this is no secret, but if you want to go catch trout in the summer, go get some croaker. Go to the right before the entrance of Seawell Park. Go out there
All
and
right, I'm
wade.
out. I'm out. I'm done with
You're
this. No. Done conversation. We're done. No,
done
I was
conversation.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, but literally go out there with croaker on a chatterweight rig, and you will catch trout. There are trout out there.
Man,
So
I do not, man. Just the whole like live bait, the bait bucket. You gotta keep them alive, and then you're trying to grab them. They're like poking you, and then you squirming on, slip out of your hand. Like last time I did it, I think I dropped like half a dozen of croaker trying to put one on the hook. Man, for me, it's just it's work, and then sometimes you gotta wait for them to eat it, and then like so it's a different from lures. But
It is.
yeah, I don't have a lot of success with croaker. I just to me it's frustrating. Like even with live shrimp, right? You got to put it on the cork. You got to hook it a certain way. You got to throw it out there. I just artificials just seems like that's my go-to. Like I just and it's funny though because offshore, if I had the opportunity to throw a live mullet over a coon pop, I'd throw the live mullet. Straight. I don't know why. Offshore is a little different for me. Like I don't mind throwing live bait offshore, or trolling, whatever.
Have that those bites offshore on live bait just feel so much different.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because like you have obviously you have the bigger reel, the bigger gear, but man, those thumps on like your on like a live pinfish or whatever you're using, and
yeah.
they just like it goes straight into your bone and go travels all the way up your shoulder, and
Vibrates through your soul, like, oh my
basically, and you're like setting the
gosh.
hook, you're setting the hook, and it's like man, this feels so big, and it's like a barely legal snapper. But but
Yeah,
they just eat different out there because I guess
right,
because it's a little more harsher out there and more of a fish eat fish world out there compared to inshore. But
right. Yeah. So I already told you about the amberjacks in Florida, right? Where we're catching them on live bait. So we'd
I
submit.
don't recall that. So tell me about
Oh,
that.
so I thought I did. Anyways, so we would,
Maybe you did.
yeah. So we'd sabiki rig. Um, this guy's cracking me up. Anyways, so we'd sabiki bait, right? We go in on bait balls and we sabiki live bait, like blue runners, whatever, um, yellowtails or hardtails. What they call them, all kinds of things, different things. So we'd get a couple of each one or grunts, and then we'd hook them, and you just drop them on the reef. And it was like every time you dropped the live bait, it was almost a guaranteed amberjack in like the 30 to 50 pound range. So probably gonna go do that again here soon. See if they're still there because I mean they were fun to fight, and I think I've seen at least 5 rods broken that day. People were out there with these little baby like little like oh my little rod with 3,000 or 4,000 rod series or real series, and they got this little flimsy rod and it's like crack. Like oh man, I broke my crack. Like what do you expect's gonna happen with that pound of like that fish? Hitting the live bait. Like,
You mean I
I
can't bring
mean,
my trout rod out there?
no, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. So they would break the rod because the idea is when they hit it, you got to pull them out of the reef, right? Or they'll break you off. So you're trying to pull them out of the reef with the little trout rod, and then you're like, oh man, like, and most of the people were excited that their rod did get breaking, and I'm thinking like, why would you do that with that rod? Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Like, I mean, they're
That just sounds expensive, you know.
right. For me, right? But I don't know. But I think a lot of people travel to this area that don't live in Florida. They travel to this spot, this area, to catch red snapper. And I think the idea was to catch red snapper, but amberjacks were there as well. So you either way, it's a fun fight, right?
Yeah.
So, but
I know we don't have our hour is almost up, but before we do go, I would definitely want to kind of get your forecast of what you want to do this fall. Is there something that you're looking forward to doing this fall for fishing?
yeah, I'm heading back to Florida.
Mm.
Heading back to Florida, fishing some reefs up there, see what it's like over there in the wintertime. So I fished there several like a couple summers now. So I kind of want to see what it's like in the winter. Um, See if it's any good fishing, what kind of fish migrate through that area that time of year, and then try to dial in on how to be more successful in catching them, right? Because every time I go out there, my first time, I'm trying to feel the area out, right? I'm trying to see what works and what doesn't work. So sometimes the first couple of days can be frustrating because you're trying to figure out how do I get these fish to bite. Sometimes you can ask regulars, but there's always a pattern, right? Like you can ask a regular and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, just drift live chat." Okay, well, how you drift in live chat, right? Do you have you know weight, any weight on it or no weight, and are you chumming? Like there's little bits of the details that you don't know when you're out there, so you got to kind of like dial it in and figure it yourself. And so that's what I'll be doing, is trying to dial in these fish, and become more successful. I am looking for a fish finder too, so I'm going to probably use that as help, right, to locate these reefs, look at these reefs on a 3D structure kind of scan, or side imaging them to see what they look like, right, and see which way the current is moving, see how they're positioning themselves, so that way I can better position whether it's a whole bait, a live bait, or a dead bait, or just chum them up and then bring them up. When do when does that work? When does it doesn't work? There's still a lot of studying I have to do down there. Um, so as far as inshore, I'm gonna probably go back to my heart and soul big trout. So when I'm here, I'll be focusing on big trout. So hopefully I get on a lot more big trout this winter. Um, Maybe a couple trips down south to the 956. We have a whole bunch of 956 people that listen to us and give us shout outs, stuff like that. So go kick it with those guys, hunt for some big trout down there, and some big trout in our base system too. So I have some spots where like I'm pretty confident I'm gonna catch them. So go give the spots a look, see, have some fun.
Awesome, awesome. Um, for me, uh, as I don't know how to say that. How funny it sounds. I'm actually want to kind of go fish around birds this fall. Um, it's actually I've come
Birds
across some
Island, birds
just birds
working.
working. Just found you get trout underneath the birds. It's been
Oh,
a while since I
I'll post a video of yesterday. Birds working, tons of them. But I'll post it up. I'll post it up today, just to
yeah
get your blood pumping.
yeah. Um, I think the last time like I came across that was probably well no I think last year I came across it, but before that, um, it was actually before right a couple days before my son was born. Like I took some time off, and my wife was like, "Yeah, go fishing right now." Because whenever he's born, you're probably not gonna have time, for the first few months. I'm like, okay, you twisted my arm enough, so uh, I went out, and I was just like, I didn't even go like when the sun came up. I just went, um, and there were just birds working everywhere.
Oh yeah, check out
Um,
the video I just sent you.
yeah, I know. I'm I'm
Hundred.
I'm I'm not gonna watch it while on stream because I'm gonna get sad
Oh
that I'm
yeah,
not out there right now.
yeah.
Um,
No, no
but
worries. No
there
worries.
are birds working everywhere, and I paddled over as fast as I could, paddled over there, and it was literally like it was actually kind of because right when my son was born, I didn't fish for like the next 6-8 months to help take care of my wife and make sure everything was good. Um, but it was just like birds working everywhere. Within the first 30 minutes, I was just covered in trout slime, um, and
Non-stop, non-stop
yeah,
action, right?
nonstop, and the fish were getting bigger too.
Oof.
Yeah, it was just like, I went in there, you catch dinks, and, it was catch like 40, 50 dinks. And all of a sudden, like, oh, got a keeper. Oh, another keeper. Oh, this one's 16 inches. Oh,
Yeah,
this one's 18. And then
yeah.
I started catching like 20, 21s, mixed in with like an 18. And I'm like, man, this is great. And like at that point, the bird stopped working, and I was literally just like um, casting at like what looked like a boil. The bird because the birds weren't there, and I would just burn my bait through it, and you could just trout would just come up and just chase after it.
Nice.
Um, there were shrimp in my kayak because they were just jumping everywhere, like tiny little shrimp, like this
Yeah.
big, and they're just jumping in my kayak. I remember I got home and like I kind of like unloaded my kayak, and like 4 months later, like I was like, "What's that smell?" And it was like I find it like a shrimp in my Revo. It's just rotten in there.
Right. So
um,
I will warn some people chasing birds, right? You have to look under the birds because sometimes these seagulls they'll flock in big numbers and they'll go over, but there's no fish underneath. It's just that sometimes this bait's coming up high up over the reef, so you gotta like you have to look underneath the birds. Now, like this will keep you from like burning 2 to 3 miles till birds are working, and you make your way that way and you notice that they're going down and they're feeding, but nothing's blowing up underneath them or nothing's pushing the bait. They're actually grabbing them up over waves or they're grabbing them up over the reefs. So you know I've heard people like, man, I went fishing on the birds and I didn't catch anything, right? Well, you gotta like so sometimes you gotta look underneath the birds, and sometimes they're in spots, right? Where you gotta wait for the birds to go down, and where the birds are going down to grab the bait, look underneath them, see if there's blow up, see if there's bait actually jumping up or popping up out of the water from predator fish attacking them. Because I've been in situations where I went and chased down some birds, and there was no fish underneath them, like they were just scooping them up as the bait's coming up over a shallow reef. They're just coming up and eating these shrimps or small shads or whatever they were eating that day. Most likely it was shrimp, but
so
just to give you the
one
heads up.
one tool that I think everybody should either way you should invest in. It's useful, mainly not only for is binoculars.
Right.
A good set of waterproof binoculars, so that yeah, as a kayaker, you can see the birds a few miles away. They're diving, but you can't really, I don't want to expend the energy and go over there if they're just like feeding off of whatever, and there's no fish underneath them. So binoculars will help you like see like, okay, I think there's trout popping underneath them or fish. Your
Right.
shrimp, you won't be able to see like shrimp pop out, but you can probably see movement. Um, and But besides that, it's just I think it's always good to have with you because you're out there in nature and you can see some pretty cool stuff, And if you have binoculars, you can just get that little bit of extra view. So definitely a good investment. I forgot which one I have, but it's a they've been pretty useful.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, and like I
Yeah.
said, especially if you're a kayaker, because
Yeah, especially yeah, right.
if you're gonna oh those birds are working on, and you go a mile and a half, you're basically booking it. You're
Right.
basically for a kayaker, you're sprinting. If you're in a pedal kayak, just going as fast as you can, or you're burning up all your energy paddling over there, and then it's all for nothing.
Yeah, or
So
you're trying to see where somebody's fishing, right? You're trying to look like, oh, he's fishing by South Deer Island. Is he over there by the reef or the gut? You gotta sit there. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
So, do you know of any way to access over there, like the South Deer Island? They closed off that small boat ramp that
yeah.
people used to use. Can you still
So
access? What's
so
what's going on with that?
I think technically at the end of the road you can launch your kayak there. You can't park there though, so you're gonna have to park like a couple hundred yards away. But I know I've seen a recreational guide service like paddling kayak paddling service like either eco tours. I think they do. They would park down there to launch their kayaks and then they would drive up and park further down. So I'm pretty sure you can still do that. Um, but yeah, that I was actually going to ask you if that ramp was still open because I saw like, oh, they reopened it back up, but then they closed it again. So I don't know what's going on over there.
Right, it's such a good area to access some really good
Yeah.
fishing. Yeah, but
You can always just go to Harbor Walk and pay the $30 and go out to the north side of the island.
I want to go to South Deer. I'm not really that happy and fond about the diversionary mouth. Actually, I
Yeah.
caught really good fish at the diversionary mouth.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I have too. But also, you can get to like the north side of Deer Island up there.
right.
It's uh, yeah, but it's like I said, $30 a lunch. So
Is it 30? I thought it was 20. It's $30 now.
it's 20. It's 20, 30. 20 is still to either way. It's still expensive for me. So
Um, yeah. Wow. I mean, okay. There's another fishing journey. I'm probably not going to get to share this one's. Man, we're out of
we'll save it. We'll save it for another time.
time.
But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, before we hop out here, I definitely want to point out uh, if you're looking for another fishing resource, head over to one last cast podcast.com. It's our official website. We have most of our episodes on there. And for those of you actually listening on the podcast format, there are some episodes that we have that are not published for various other reasons, um, namely like Meryl keeps dropping off the call, or
Hey,
or
right. No, you're right.
or or for whatever reason our audio is not up to par. So we have some other episodes that are on there. They're great resources. Also, I've been writing reports and blogs on there, so just go ahead check out one last cast podcast.com. Also, we posted on our Facebook page at the beginning of September for our contest, which I definitely want to give a shout out to Julian Lerma. He won our last contest for a fishing reel. Congrats to you. Meryl, have you been in contact with that? I should have asked that before I just like said that he's getting a reel, right?
Oh yeah, here you got through. He posted a video
Oh,
about it.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, just facebook.com/slash one less cast podcast. You can find us on there. Um, and yeah, you can find us all the info about us on there as well. Glad you guys are tuning in and listening. We wouldn't be here without y'all. We mainly do it to kind of share our love and knowledge of kayaking and fishing. So just glad to have you guys on for the ride. Um, yeah, and before we hop off, another shout out to our sponsors, giving Knock and Tail Lures. I saw Michael was on here earlier. He does great work with Knock and Tail Lures. If you're looking for them, knockandtaillures.com or My Coast Outdoors. Like Meryl said, we've been really, I've been really liking that pearl chartreuse, but also, of course, the plum chartreuse is my go-to. It has a rattle, built-in rattle in the tail, just drives fish crazy. Um, JD, thanks for following. Glad to have you on board. Also, giving a shout out to 4A Printing. If you're looking for any custom merch, such as like buffs right here, he does custom buff. Aaron does great work. So search up Aaron at 4A Printing, and he'll get you hooked up. Um, Also, DSKA, Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a Facebook group to grow and talk fishing and kayaking up and down the Texas coast, search Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. And of course, Brittany Selesky, Meryl's lovely wife. If you're looking for residential or commercial real estate here in Houston, if you're looking for something specific, reach out to her. She'll get you hooked up and help you find what you need. 281-740-0498. And
She,
yeah,
she is she is running a promotion where like if you purchase a property or she sells one of your properties or vice whatever, you get a she's gonna pay for a trip with me to take you guys fishing or take you fishing on a kayak. So
oh,
forgot. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Did I
Awesome.
say that? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, if you want a fishing trip, just I mean, you're already going to get the house or sell the house anyways. Might as well get a
Yeah,
fishing trip for it.
right, right,
So
right. Or if you're gonna buy one to or whatever,
yeah, exactly. If you're going to get a house anyways, just get a fishing trip with it. So
yeah.
um, but that's awesome. Uh, Meryl, I always put you on the spot, so I'm going to put you on the spot again. Any last parting words of wisdom before we head out?
No, no, not really.
No.
Yeah, just I guess one of the things I learned is don't be afraid to ask people what they do, the locals, what they're doing. It'll probably cut your time in half and shortcuts, and learning some new techniques and strategies on what other people do to help you become more successful.
Yeah, the worst they can say is no.
Right.
So if they offer knowledge, that's great. It's just more knowledge to put in. I think that's not even just fishing, just in general. Um, if you don't know, ask. Worst case, they'll say no, but
Right.
best case, you'll gain knowledge and have a good time. So,
Right.
alrighty. Thanks you guys for joining us. This has been One Last Cast podcast. You guys have a good one. Tight lines.
Take care, guys.